Maybe these people should have thought about the dropping test scores rather than creating bloated bureaucracies and injecting woke ideology into everything. Test scores in America deserve no praise amongst the developed world, despite the fact that we spend more per student every year. The amount of money is not the problem. The problem is government getting in the way. Why do we even need all of these federal grants? States and districts can just keep the money for themselves. So instead of getting the news from a far left source that only claims to be centrist and unbiased, they are worried about people going to stations that are not in lockstep with Operation Mockingbird. There may also be some controlled opposition out there, but that is another issue for another day. Liberals are all about diversity, except when it comes to diversity of thought. People like Mr. Lukovich have really taken this quote and ran with it. Just because the Supreme Court agreed with President Trump that he should be able to do his job does not mean that the rule of law is over. I doubt he had a problem when Biden bragged about circumventing the Supreme Court. Oh, right. That was an executive decision that he supported. This means that it is obviously constitutional. How dreadfully backwards. Mr. Heller really does not understand this case at all. Thomas Jefferson had to explain that their system of government ensured that the government would not regulate the church. Instead, the church would act as a check on the government. So in other words, all of the red tape is parted for Moses to lead the people through the swamp, just like how the Red Sea was parted. Thus, this allowed Moses to do his job as the spiritual leader of his flock. Mr. Heller just hopes that no one will notice his mistake. Well, a baby might have a problem. But if there's an outbreak in your area, you can stay home and hide under your bed. That is what the liberals should have done during the China virus pandemic. But instead, they shut down the entire economy. It was not until recently that people were terrified of the measles, because just staying home from school or work for a few days is not a big deal. At least on the surface, this makes sense. However, there is one key flaw in Mr. Rawls' reasoning. If you find someone with whom you agree with everything on, stop staring at the mirror and get out into the real world. Clinton, Obama, and Biden have made decisions that I could agree with, but I would not vote for any of them. Likewise, President Trump has made mistakes, but I try to weigh both sides. I, for one, choose not to throw President Trump out with the bathwater. When I first saw this cartoon, I was scared. I was afraid that MS-13 or Trendy Aragua were impersonating ICE. Fortunately for everyone, that was not the case. It is just that liberals do not support immigration law and want anyone to be able to enter at any time by, quote, immediately surging to the border, close quotes. They also want the literal slave plantations to go on unhindered. How is that compassionate? Yes, I agree that the courts are supposed to be a check on executive overreach. Yes, I agree that executive power can be disastrous in the wrong hands. I also believe that a district judge cannot make decisions for the entire country. And when a president brags about circumventing the Supreme Court, like Biden did, then he is a dictator and should not be in office. However, not only has President Trump not done any circumvention, the Supreme Court is just allowing President Trump to do his job. Another day, another liberal comparing the illegals to Anne Frank. This is the same party that bars Jews from attending classes and wants Palestine to destroy them all. Moving on, Anne Frank and her family were legally in the country that they were born in before the Nazis came to power. Anna Frank, on the other hand, came from a family that broke into America rather than doing it the legal way. There is no honest comparison between the two. Well, every situation is global warming, and when every situation is global warming, any situation can be blamed. We cannot talk about cloud seeding or Operation Popeye. At least liberals are not still blaming Doge cuts. Either way, blaming global warming was inevitable. The ironic thing is that Obama literally did a lot of these things. He was not so much saying these things out loud, but actions speak louder than words. Whether it be directing the spying on Trump, implementing so-called green policies without worrying about the consequences, the fact remains that even in exaggeration, Mr. Jones cannot help but give a glimmer of truth.